the amount of power that goes into it, anything that calls forth a creature when you talk about a spell, it requires your concentration. So I think that should be something that is a limiting factor. So requiring attunement, I think, has to be a must. I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
And I'm Nerdarchy Dave.
Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about crafting magic items, and we are going to be making Dice of Conjuring today.
All right, so where did this idea come from?
So I was poking around over on the D&D Beyond website, and I saw one of the articles, which really is, it literally is just a promo for these dice.
All right, so that is definitely, evocative, having the animals or creatures coming out of the dice when you use them. Definitely a lot of fun. Definitely, gets my ideas thinking.
Yeah, so I was like, we've made magical dice before, and I was like, these would be really cool as a magic item. Probably not done these exactly, but I've done like some similar things. So I was like, we should make this and talk about it and see what folks think. And also, dice culture and amongst D&D players is definitely a thing. So why not put it into your games? We also play, games within our games where we're gambling and stuff, and we're playing dice games. So you know what D&D needs is more magical dice in the game itself.
All right, so if we're looking at creating these dice, when you look at that particular video, you're seeing a large assortment of creature types coming out of them. So, are we going to have, a singular set of dice that cause these weird things to happen? Or, are we going to make more than one set of dice? What's going on?
So my thought was to do a full set of dice. Why not? This is what we play with in the game. Why not play with them in the game and make them a magic item? You have a little dice bag. You reach in, you pull out your D4 to D20, or actually it's a D100, I guess. And then you throw the dice down that you want to use. And so there's 7 different dice, and we are talking about conjuring things.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of conjuring things, sure, you could do objects and items, but really, my mind went to monsters,
Sure.
the dice show anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 14 monster types, but 7 dice.
Right. So you could kind of go and pair up, and that each of the die represents 2 different creature types. But there's so many things that just I don't feel really fits the I should be able to conjure dragons and humanoids and a couple others. So we're like, all right, let's pare this down and pair things up at the same time.
So, speaking of, you shouldn't be able to summon some things like dragons, maybe. That kind of goes into, what is the rarity of the magic item, right? How powerful would the magic item have to be to summon something like a dragon? When you get into that, you're talking, I want to say legendary or artifact,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we're talking about really, truly powerful dragons.
Yeah, so, we haven't fully made this magic item yet. We've got some ideas started and some things that we're working on. So we're actually using this video to kind of spitball some ideas and really figure out what this is going to be. So depending upon what things make it on the list, I would say this is going to be very rare at the least, but probably a legendary item.
Well, and with that, the other key factor is how many uses. Are we going to use charges? Is it an attunement item?
So I would say that this has to be an attunement item because, the amount of power that goes into it, anything that calls forth a creature when you talk about a spell, it requires your concentration. So I think that should be something that is a limiting factor. So requiring attunement, I think, has to be a must.
Now, the uses is really tough because it's even if you're you can use 1 die per day, right? That's still 7 uses. That's a lot of summons. Do you do it by week? Do you do it by charges?
So I think, the charges is a possibility. But I think that, you could have a couple limiting factors. You could have it be, you can use the object. Perhaps the bag of dice is a singular item, and you reach in and you can roll randomly for, a particular amount of charges, or you can choose the die you wish for even more charges. And depending upon, what you do, perhaps the die itself, if you roll a 1, crumples into dust, and that die is then removed from the options that you have at some point in time, meaning that, all right, that D4, you might get one use out of it before it's gone. So like, I think that is some
Oh yeah,
interesting components.
I kind of like the idea if you use all the charges, you roll all the dice, and any ones that are showing the dice crumple. Like, so you lose those. So that could be a way of doing it as well.
I like that idea as well.
So there's a risk reward. There's a bunch of that going on. So what do we got to think about next?
So if we're talking about rolling dice, we are trying to essentially nerdify and geekify the dice as a thing, so that it exists both out of game and in game. So the player reaches in, grabs a die, rolls it, whether they're choosing to roll. But we have to determine, what does that mean? If I pull out, the way we've got it, if you pull out the percentile D10, you're actually going to roll both your D10s because it's representative of a D100. So that's how we get the full 7 different dice and its uses. But what die you pull out and roll determines the type of creature that is going to show up. And then we're going to, in order to properly make this, we're going to make a random roll chart for each and every list. So like if you were to pull out that percentile die, you're technically rolling 100. So for that particular list, you're talking about summoning either a beast or a plant, depending upon what you roll.
Now, there's one of two ways to do it that I was kind of thinking of, right? Like the die can represent the dice are going to represent types, first of all. And then when you roll that, the die itself could be choosing the actual creature that gets summoned. So it's a D1, D120, D100, D14, table, and those are the options.
Right.
Or the die could be used to determine how many of the creatures show up.
So you could go completely crazy like that. So I see it an option of, you could do a representative, the D4, you only have 4 options to summon, and that's how it goes. Or it could be, like you said, it could represent the quantity. You could have just a straight, each die is representative of a singular entity, or in the case where there's split, you can choose between the beast or the plant. Or you could have, regardless of what die you pull out, you roll a D20 and consult the appropriate chart for the creature type that you would be summoning. I think that's the easiest way to go.
Yeah, so I mean, I like the idea of grabbing a D20 and the summon die and rolling them both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And the summon die determines the number of creatures that appear, and the D20 determines from a chart what type of creature, because then you would just tailor the type of things. So like your beast and plants, you're going to choose the weakest to put on the actual list because you might get 100 of them. So, but who knows what players are going to do with 100 cats.
So that's where I feel like, I think the die should be representative of the character in game pulls out a die and rolls it, and the die rolls on the ground. It comes on a side. The player in game, like at the table, would probably be rolling different dice. I don't feel it's ever useful to be like, oh, well, I've got 100 wolves. 100 wolves is incredibly problematic to roll. Having summoned 8 wolves at a game, going through 16 D20 rolls because wolves attack with advantage is absolutely devastating on anything that has the slightest chance of hitting. So I would not want to sick that upon any GM or player. So I think the character in game rolls whatever die comes out, but the player at the table could possibly be rolling a D20 to determine what is summoned, and maybe a D4 or a D6 of the number of things that show up. But anything higher than a D6 gets crazy.
I don't know, folks. Does Ted just hate fun? Let us know down in the comments. But so there's different ways we can hammer out and figure out how we would actually do that. Like you said, it could be ridiculous. But then again, maybe like I said, I would probably scale down the creatures to be more mundane.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, squirrels, rats, cats.
Sure, and for beasts and stuff, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if we look at the chart, we've got a D12 for elemental and fey. Unless you're planning them all to be sprites and mephits, okay, I've got 12 fire elementals. Well, look at that. Because that could be possible. I mean, heck, even the elemental myrmidon that's, lower than the straight up elemental, as is, summoning 12 of them could be problematic.
I think actually the Myrmidons are slightly above.
Oh, are they?
Because they're like the weird class and they have armor and they use weapons.
All right. Well, maybe I'm looking at
cool.
it the wrong way, but I know there are lesser elementals above your typical methods that, you know, could be problematic if you summon 12 of them.
All right. So let's take a look and figure out what dice we associated with what types.
D8s are assigned to the aberrations. The D100, i.e. your percentile die, is linked to beasts and plants. Your D20 is celestial and fiends, which means, yes, you could technically get 20 fiends that you're summoning. Your D6 is a construct. Your D12 is elemental or fey. The D10 is your monstrosity, and your D4 is oozes.
Yeah, and again, like even that could change, right? Like if I were to associate the number, then I'd be like, D20 maybe oozes, you know, and not celestial and fey, right? Like, or celestial and fiends. But again, like you said, the numbers could get a little bit crazy depending on what you roll.
Oh, look at that. You've got 20 gelatinous cubes. Oh my.
Listen, I was in an encounter where the walls were built from gelatinous cubes just stacked on each other. Thank you, Jacob, from XP to level 3 for that experience. And they were multicolored, and it was just a room of nothing but them. And we had to figure out how to get from one side of the room to the other.
Sounds like Flight.
Well, I think we had a tabaxi that used to climb across the ceiling, and used our tabaxi,
speed power.
Speed power, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, that character made it, but what about the rest of you?
Yeah, well, I think we just needed a thing on the other side.
Oh, okay.
So it did kind of work, but yeah, it could get a little ridiculous. But again, we're gonna hammer it out. Maybe we'll make a website post over on nerdarchy.com so that you can check it out. While you're poking around in the description, there might be a link for that you can look at.
So, maybe we'll make that item that's going to summon some awesome creatures and have yet another conjuring option for your players. But you know what? Sometimes, you can be the thing that gets summoned.
A trip to the Planar Zoo is no walk through the park when you wake up as part of the exhibit. Will the characters learn the truth of their captivity, or will the zookeepers perfectly constructed habitat keep even the sharpest adventurers in the dark? New player character race, zookeeper, 3 new magic items including plushies of thunderous power, 8 new creatures including Mzakatha and the zookeeper NPC, humanoid exhibit adventure for 4 to 6 characters of 10th to 15th level.
So just a fun, one of our products that we've got over on nerdarchy.com. Go check it out. Add those options to your game.
Let us know what you think about the dice of conjuring and summoning. Would you use something like that in your game? Maybe you already made something like that. Let us know down in the comments below.
While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Go ahead and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single video.
Quick reminder, we drop new videos Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday here on the channel, so come on back. But you can't wait till then. No worries, we got you covered. We did another video about crafting magic items with the Croak Cloak, one of Ted's favorites.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.